Hello, my name is Joe Martin, and thanks for taking a few moments to watch our weekend message. We're going through the book of Luke verse by verse, and so if you're interested in that kind of a study, going through the Bible just a verse at a time, this would be a really good study to stay connected with. This is a cabin talk. There's also in-person services that will be at 8 o'clock and 9:30 for outdoor service and 11 o'clock on Sundays at TFBC's building in Toledo, Washington. I just want to take a few minutes as we look into the book of Luke to talk about toxic religion. You know, a lot of you are sitting there, and maybe you're a person who you say, I just don't like organized religion. Or maybe you have family members that's what they say. They maybe over the years or different things that happened even in recent years say, I just don't like organized religion at all. You know, I don't really have a problem with God. Or you may say you're a spiritual person if you don't like organized religion. Or maybe you hear this saying, maybe you feel this way. I can't stand all those religious hypocrites, all those people that are just judgy all the time. And maybe in addition to that, you have strong feelings about all the bad that's been done in the name of God. And there has been a lot of bad done, not just in Christianity, but religions throughout history. Now we forget there's been a lot of good done, but that's I know you might feel that way. These concerns about toxic religion, about bad religion, as I talked about in the midweek, bad faith, they're not a new problem. As a matter of fact, nothing made Jesus more angry than toxic religion. This is really, really important for you to recognize that. As a matter of fact, some examples, Luke chapter 19, 45, it says, Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out those who were selling and saying to them, it is written, and my house shall be a house of prayer, but you have made it into a robber's den. Jesus was decrying the fact that toxic religion, of exploitive religion, of turning religion into a profit and into a big business, distorts and shades what God is trying to do. As a matter of fact, Jesus said in Matthew 23:13, he said, but woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut off the kingdom of heaven from people, for you do not enter in yourself, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. In other words, you don't enter into the rule of God in your own lives, but you shut other people out. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense you make long prayers, therefore you will receive greater condemnation. And woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you travel around the sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourself. And woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe the mint and the dill and the cumin, and you have neglected the weightier provisions of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. But these are the things you should have done without neglecting the others. You see, all of this is about that toxic religion misrepresents God. It gives people, and maybe has given you, the wrong idea about God, about what the church is about, and what the gospel message is, and what Jesus is all about. As a matter of fact, it misrepresents God so badly that it's one of the few things that Jesus becomes righteously angry about. As a matter of fact, in Mark chapter 3, verse 4, Jesus was healing a man, about to heal a man, and there were people there, the religious crowd, that was both the scribes and the Pharisees. These were very conservative, very kind of blue collar. There were other people out of that group. They believed the Old Testament. They were Messiah seekers. They believed in the resurrection, but they had their own ideas. And in Mark chapter 3, verse 4, it says, and he said to them, is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath? Now, if you have questions about the Sabbath, you should go back and watch last week's message or listen to last week's message, because the context here is all about the Sabbath. Is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath, to save a life or to kill? Now, they didn't say anything. They kept silent. And after looking around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart. Look at how he was looking at how hard their hearts were. They were religious. They were waiting for him to do something they could catch him at. They were looking around with anger. It grieved him at their hardness of heart. And he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And he stretched it out, and the hand was restored. Now, Luke's version of this in Luke chapter 6 is what we're going to deal with today. I'm going to read it through once, and then I'm going to go through three things you can look for when it comes to toxic religion. Luke chapter 6, verse 6, on another Sabbath day, he entered the synagogue, and he was teaching, and there was a man there whose right hand was withered, and the scribes and the Pharisees were watching him closely to see if he healed on the Sabbath, so that they might find a reason to accuse him. In other words, they saw that if he did good on the Sabbath or healing on the Sabbath, that was working and violating their ideas about the Sabbath, their traditions. But he knew that what they were thinking, and he said to the man with the withered hand, get up and come forward. And he got up and he came forward. And Jesus said to him, I ask you, to the Pharisees, I ask you, is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath, to save a life or to destroy it? And after looking around at them, he said to him, stretch out your hand. And he did so, and the hand was restored. But they themselves were filled with rage and discussed together what they might do to Jesus. Some translations will say how they might destroy him. How do you recognize toxic religion? And I think a lot of you already do, but here's the problem. If you are in toxic religion yourself, the problem is you won't think your religion is toxic. You'll just think you're right. This is one of the problems that you get into. The first thing you'll see about toxic religion, it's always rules over relationship. It's always rules over relationship. Look at Luke 6:6 again. Another Sabbath, he entered the synagogue. He was teaching, and there was a man whose right hand was withered. The scribes and the Pharisees were watching him closely to see if he healed on the Sabbath so that they might find a reason to accuse him. You see, they didn't even think about the guy, the suffering in that man's life. They didn't care about how it was impacting his family and his life. The rule-based religion creates blind eyes and hard hearts. It's all about rules. It's all about your handbook. You see, all you can see when you get into a toxic religion is your construct. You know, one guy came up to me and I was talking about some famous rock. I had said something about a famous rock star that had given a lot of resource. I think it was like not somebody I've really paid that much attention to, like Bono or somebody like that. And a man approached me afterward and said, I don't like him at all. And I said, okay, well, why not? And he says, well, he is friends with with Barack Obama, who was the president at the time, which I didn't have a preference. I'm not politically oriented that way, one way or the other. I don't get into that. And I said, well, I don't know anything about Bono's relationship with God. And I don't know anything about his politics except for he's from Ireland and he gave $10 million more than I did. and that wasn't satisfying to this person. He just saw this one dimension of his life. His political view at that point was so obscured anything else. This man gave $10 million. I don't know anything more about it. Toxic religion can cause you to not see people's humanity or even the good things that sometimes people do, even if they don't agree with you. Toxic religion causes you to not see people's suffering and what's going on with them in the moment, to not be present because you're so focused on your rules, you're not present in that moment. You don't realize that what you're looking at when people are talking about homeless people on the TV, or when they're, railing about some sexual immorality, that's someone's daughter. That's someone's son. That's a mom or a dad or a brother or a sister. That's not just an addict out there, or a Muslim out there, or an immigrant out there, or in Jesus' day, a lowly Samaritan. Rules over relationships. I was astounded one time when I was in the presence of a preacher, and he was quite unhappy with the problems they were having in his area, and he was quite into, hunting and everything, and he said, I think we ought to he proposed that there should be a tweaker season where you could just randomly go out and shoot drug addicts, people that were strung out on meth or other drugs. And, I was so kind of shocked by that attitude. And I thought, those people that you see as others, they are, I maybe coached them in baseball, or maybe I visited them in jail. They're somebody's son, somebody's daughter. They're in a bad place. Maybe they're doing bad things. But what happens is, when you get toxic religion, you can get focused on your ideas and opinions, and your rules begin to obscure the relationships that people have. The second thing about toxic religion is it always goes to cruelty over compassion. Jesus says he knew what they were thinking in verse 8, and he said to the man with the withered hand, "Get up and come forward." And he got up and came forward. Toxic religion will tend to make you cruel. Frederick Douglass, who was a famous former slave and an abolitionist, said the religious masters were always the cruelest, because they had developed a theology to justify their oppression. And they had a whole list of memorized select scriptures to sear their consciences and to proof text their way out of any conviction that what they were doing was wrong and their cruelty was wrong. Notice what Jesus did. Jesus said to them, "I ask you, is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath, to save a life or to destroy it?" In other words, Jesus is saying to this religious group of people, is there room for compassion, for mercy in your Sabbath, for kindness? Is there room for compassion in your Sabbath? That's a great question. Because, see, Jesus knew, since he was the Lord of the Sabbath, Jesus knew the purpose of the Sabbath was not this misrepresented cruelty. He had said just earlier in this narrative in the book of Luke chapter 4, when he stood up in the temple, he said, in the book of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him, and he opened the book and he found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recover the sight of the blind, and to set free those who are oppressed, to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord." In other words, I'm going to declare the year of Jubilee, the year of Sabbath. That's what toxic religion will do. Cruelty over compassion. And then toxic religion will show itself with fear over faith. You see, those religious people right there were so afraid of change that it blinded them. You see, their fear of change blinded their faith in the miracle that was happening right before them with that man. They were so afraid of change, they're willing to do what Jesus said. They're willing to try and put the new wine into old wineskins and ruin everything, the skin and the wine itself. They were so afraid of being wrong, and this is a tendency that I've seen a lot of in recent years. They're so afraid of being wrong that they double down into their defense against faith, not for it. They can't see the miracle that is right in front of them. Stretch out your hand and he's healed. They're so afraid of not being in control, they become enraged at a threat. You know what the threat is? Jesus himself. So how do they react to this miracle? After looking around at them, he said to him, stretch out your hand, and he did so, and his hand was restored. And then they themselves, filled with rage, discussed together what they might do to Jesus. In other words, some versions say how they might destroy him. You see, here's the thing that is a common mistake that people make. Miracles don't always lead to people having faith. Miracles don't always lead to people following Jesus with all their hearts. Sometimes God's truth and work brings fear and more rage than you would ever expect. I mean, think about the reactions to Jesus. They doubled down. Well, you did the great miracle, but it must have been you did it with the power of the devil. Jesus said, now anything can be forgiven you, but if you reject me like that, that's a blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. That can't be forgiven now or later. They begin conspiring right there in the face of this great miracle. Their fear takes over and they think, we've got to kill him. This looks bad for our denomination. And they got together not just with the other religious people, the Pharisees. The book of Mark tells us they got together with the Herodians, who were pretty much secular. We got to get rid of them. You know, I want you to look at the next steps at the end of this message about how you would respond, because the place you start with really the goodness of the gospel. First of all, you've got to see what isn't good. You've got to turn from the falsehood to the right. You turn from these negatives, these toxicities, and you turn from this focus on rules into a personal relationship with Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. You trust him for yourself. You come to him and say, you're good. I don't understand all this other stuff, but I know you're good. You turn from cruelty that you've gotten into. You justify it. And you turn to compassion. Jesus was moved with compassion, and you need to be moved with compassion. You need to be tender-hearted. And then you need to turn from fear, from living a life fearing all this stuff. There's all these people saying don't live in fear, but they're terrified. The people that I hear saying that are terrified even to do basic things to take care of themselves. Fear over faith. Well, you know what? You need to turn from fear. God hasn't given you a spirit of fear, but of power and love and of a disciplined mind. Turn in faith to him. Trust him. He says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. You'll be forgiven. He will rescue you. He will do the miracle in your life. And you'll begin to see what only faith can show you, because let me tell you how you follow Jesus. You walk by faith, not by sight. Now, this Sunday, the in-person services, we'll have a Lord's Supper service. We always do this right before Thanksgiving. And I want to, tell you, you know what Paul's answer to toxic religion was? Paul's answer to toxic religion? Remember Jesus. Remember Jesus. Let me encourage you to, we'll do everything we can to make your experience in person as safe as it can in regards to the pandemic. We will do all that we can for that and encourage other people to do so as well. We have an outdoor service with heated. It's under a tent. It's heated. If that makes you feel more comfortable. So whatever it takes. But you know what? Maybe coming, beginning to come, again, will be good for you. Now, if you have underlying issues and concerns, I understand. And I'm grateful that you watch this. And I'm grateful for many of you that support this and give. And you can give to this. And many of you give repeatedly. You set it up ahead of time. You go to our website and you go to the part that says give, and it sets it all up, shows you how to do it. Thank you. But let me tell you something. If you want to avoid toxic religion, what you have to do is remember Jesus. Remember Jesus in everything. And so as we take the Lord's Supper, just remember what it's about. We do this together. We pull together and we remember together what the Lord Jesus has done for us on the cross. And when we begin to look at the cross, that he laid down his life for us, then all of this other stuff, the cruelty and the fear and this kind of behavior that we get pulled into, and that somehow people try and make it sound like good religion to us, this focus on rules and performative behavior, it all falls apart and you just look at Christ. You know what it says? Fixing your eyes upon Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. Thank you for watching. God bless you.